It's paused.
We're going to allow, or we should point people towards the closed captioning in the Zoom.
Benjamin, there was a link, I thought, right, that was going to be posted in the chat.
Hi, welcome. Welcome to the RAC Arts3C Grant Program info session for fall 2023. We're gonna start sharing our slide just to cover a couple of sort of admin things, and then we'll introduce ourselves. So, Benjamin. Sharing our screen. We want to welcome you and make sure that you know that we are recording this info session. We will be posting it online for future viewing in case you want to come back and watch it again, or point fellow artists to the recording, or if you have to leave and want to finish up later. We will also provide English and Spanish language transcripts, and we have ASL and live captioning. We will post the live captioning link available in our chat. And please feel welcome to put your questions in the Q&A part of the webinar. And I think with that, we will more formally introduce ourselves. Next. There we are. Oh, and it's an old photo, but my name is Ingrid Carlson. I'm a grants officer here at RAC. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I work on a number of grant programs here at RAC, and I'm looking forward to this next round of Arts3C.
I'm Yael Amir. I'm a grant specialist here at RAC. I come from a background in visual arts, and I am working on Arts3C and a few other grants, and I will be answering your questions in advance and after you submit your grant, and all your needs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Barra-Allen. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also a grant specialist at RAC. I come from a dance background, grant writing, program development. I'm happy to be here and to share information about this round of Arts3C.
Benjamin, do you mind unsharing so we can see the whole team and you can introduce?
Hi, everyone. My name is Benjamin Feinstein. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm an administrator at RAC working with the grants team and in public art and various things. And I also want to welcome our ASL interpreters, Mary and Sarah. They're here, as well as our live transcriptionist captioner, Idella. So, perfect.
Okay, I'm gonna round out introductions. Thank you, Benjamin. I'm Helen Daltoso, she, her pronouns. I work as a grant maker here at RAC, and today my job as assigned is to mind the Q&A. So as a reminder, put your questions into the Q&A feature, and we will get to them as we move along. I also have another assignment today. I want to acknowledge that the city made a decision a couple weeks ago to not renew their contract with the Regional Arts and Culture Council for our services. We're not going to talk about that today. If you have any questions, concerns, you want to get more information, please reach out to me directly. I'm on the website. You can email me. That's my preferred method of communication, but you need to know a couple things today. We're still here. We're here right now, and we're making grants, okay? Our focus is on you, the applicant. You've met Monica, Ingrid, Yael. We're here. We're answering questions. We're reading drafts. We can communicate with you about your past grant applications. We want to do that for you. That's the good work we've done for years. We're still here and we still are going to do it. We know there will be changes. We just don't know what they are, right? There's no plan yet in place. And as we know something that's going to impact you, we will communicate that with you. It likely isn't going to have anything to do with the application or review process. There may be something with the grant administration component that comes up that we have to change simply because of timing issues with the city transition. All that being said, the city of Portland expects us to support the community in a smooth transition. And if you have no experience with RAC, I need you to trust us. We're here for you. And if you have experience with RAC, you know that we're here for you. So that smooth transition is something that we want on behalf of the community because that's who we're focused on right now.
Thank you. All right, back to the show. So as we get back to the PowerPoint, I'm just going to give you a quick run of the show. Is going to be talk briefly, or we can go on the next slide with our agenda. We're going to go briefly, introduction about the Regional Arts and Culture Council, overview of Arts3C. We're going to point out highlights from the guidelines, although I hope you will all read the full guidelines before you apply. We're going to talk about the application questions, make sure they're clear. Want to highlight opportunities for support as we lead up to the September 20th deadline. And there will be a couple places where we pause just to make sure we cover any questions for the good of the webinar. And then if folks need to hang on a little later after our webinar, we'll try and get all of the questions answered that we can. Of course, you can always follow up with us at grants@rac.org with your specific proposal questions. All right, next. I'm just going to cover this. Regional Arts and Culture Council, 501c3 that serves the Tri-County area, Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties through our grant programs, through our public art programs, and other arts advocacy for the region. Our mission is to enrich our communities through arts and culture, and we've been doing that for 28 years, I think, at this time, and continuing to evolve our programs to serve the arts community. Next. Helen, would you like to speak to value-based grant making? Oh, she's on.
Sure. Sorry, I was answering a question. So value-based grant making, RAC has values, and these are published on our website, and we've woven these into the review process for our community reviewers, and they're available to you in the guidelines. Accessibility, advocacy, equity, diversity, community, and innovation are all values that impact our work every day. We're asking you, when you're considering what to apply for and how you want to write that into the application, that you think about these values and where and how your work or what it is you're requesting funds for might sync up with any of these values. I hope you'll agree it's pretty broad, and it doesn't have to be all of these values, right? It can just be one of them in spades, but just be thinking about that as you consider what it is you are going to choose to apply for.
Thank you. Next.
So I'm going to just introduce the Arts3C grant opportunity that you're here for today. This is an evolution of RAC's programming. We used to offer project grants and professional development grants and the Make, Learn, Build grants. And this is really a combination of all of those into one grant application process that encompasses a variety of needs in our arts community. And that includes the creation of work, personal or business development, general expenses related to sustaining your individual arts practice or the ongoing operation of your arts organization. We use applicant identified request categories that we'll talk about a little bit later in this info session, but an example is an exhibition, an equipment request. You'll mark those according to your proposal, and that will enable us to organize the applications on our end from the single process into a bunch of different panels for review. The awards are from 1,000 to 5,000, and the application changes depending on what grant request amount you select. So applying for more money means that you're going to answer more questions and give the community reviewers a little bit more information about what you're asking for. Next slide.
So who can apply? If you are an individual artist or you are an organized entity, including businesses, LLCs, sole proprietors, or schools, you can apply as long as your legal address, meaning the address on your W-9 form, is in the Tri-County region. We verify those W-9 forms at the point of receiving the grant funds, but you want to make sure that your address is in the Tri-County area, right in your applicant eligibility profile. We want to make sure that you know that grant income is taxable income, and you will receive a 1099 NEC at the end of the calendar year in the year in which you receive a grant. Just want to make sure that that is clear right up front. And in order to be eligible, you have to have closed out all your existing open grants by submitting your final report. As it says here, it takes a couple days to review the final report, so please don't wait until September 20th to close out open grants. Yael is amazing. She gets right on those final reports as quickly as possible, but it still takes 24 hours even for somebody as speedy as her. So please be on top of your grant administration so you can apply again. Next. Oh, this is me again. So what can you apply for? As said before, this is an evolution of past project grants and professional development grants, and we've really expanded to be whatever you as the applicant need to support your art making and your artistic practice. So most of the applications that we've seen come into Arts3C are project-based, the creation and sharing of work. But if you are producing an event, let's say you're a festival or you're a farmer's market and you want to have some arts programming as part of that, you can apply to support the arts programming element of your bigger project. You can apply for activities that further your work in your artistic practice, as well as that sort of general investment, the operating expenses for you in your work as an arts organization or your work as a practicing artist. I just want to say, this is an opportunity to say that one of the elements of the review is about community engagement and community impact. So you can apply for that laptop, but you still have to make the case in the application of how that kind of investment is having a wider impact on the wider community through your practice and through your engagement and in your art making. So, but if you need it to support your artistic work, you can apply for it. Next. Some other things to consider as you learn about Arts3C. You can only have one RAC grant open at a time, one a year. So if you were an applicant and received a grant last fall, 2022, you are now eligible again to apply in fall 2023, as long as you have your final report turned in. If you received a grant in spring 2023, you are not yet eligible to apply, although with another cycle planned for spring, you'll be eligible again at that point. So one grant at a time, one award a year. We do welcome collaborations. If you've got a bigger project involving other artists, you are welcome to come, but one person should step forward as the applicant. We don't want to see multiple applications for the same project. They will not be eligible. Art students at the time of application are not eligible. So if you are enrolled in a degree or certificate program in the arts at an institution of higher learning, you need to finish that program, finish getting that degree, and then you will be eligible to apply for a RAC grant. We don't accept applications from GOS organizations, you know who you are, but we do accept GOS organizations as partners on an application or even as a fiscal sponsor for a project. Keep in mind that the end date for this current cycle needs to be on December 15th or later. That doesn't mean December 16th. You need to be thoughtful about the timeline of your project and when it will be done. Your start date can be at any point now, past, in the future, but your end date of what you are working on needs to be in the future after the grant cycle begins. Please keep in mind ADA accessibility. Be thinking about your venue, be thinking about your services, how you're going to engage the full community to access the work that you are making. Funding from the counties does go to support applicants in those counties. In particular, I'm talking about Washington County and Clackamas County. Their investment in RAC grant making goes back out to support the applicants in those counties. So be mindful of that nature of the public funds. And then I said it before, it bears repeating, grant awards are taxable income. So if you're applying for a grant, be thinking about how am I tracking my work, my professional business as an artist, or in order to be planning for that. What I'm not saying is put taxes as a line item in your budget, because business tracking is more complicated than that. If you have questions, you can reach out, but we really do recommend that you consult a tax professional when it comes to tracking grant income. And then most grant awards will be at the level requested, meaning if you ask for $3,000, you will be awarded $3,000. When it says some awards may be less, we'll talk more about this against the review criteria, but there are some applications that come in at the $5,000 request level that may only receive a $4,000 award. But otherwise, 99% of the time, grant awards are at the level requested. All right, next slide.
All right, so there's a lot that goes into this process, everything from the design all the way to the panel and the feedback. Some important things to note here are the due date is Wednesday, September 20th by 5 p.m. Don't wait until the last minute to submit. Panels are scheduled for October and November, and then the announcements are planned by December 15th. Make sure that you have us on a safe sender list. We're grants@rac.org because everyone will be notified by email. Check your promotions or spam folder. And you can also see your status of your grant by logging into your account on the portal. We ask that you don't contact us prior to December 15th. We're going to go live as soon as we can, 5 p.m. That is our goal. So just be patient with us. It takes a lot to make these programs happen. Next slide.
So here we have the review criteria, and I'm not going to read through them directly. They are in the grant guidelines, which you are going to read. And I'm going to, I just want to point out a few things. Please take a look at the review criteria before you start filling out your application. This is what you're going to be, evaluated on. The criteria 1 through 5 each get a score between 1 and 7 by the community reviewers. And Then the last review criteria here, alignment with the core values, is really focused on those requests of 5,000. If you ask for 5,000, you have to answer the question, how is this in alignment with the core values? It doesn't have to be all 6, but you know, really have to go, you have to explain that, and then the community reviewers will evaluate that. And if you make the case for core values and are otherwise awarded by a grant, you will get 5,000. Some applications do well in the other review criteria, but don't quite make the case for core values. And those are the ones that may be awarded $4,000. But all applications between 1 and 5 get evaluated on the criteria numbers 1 through 5. The other thing I want to point out is number 4, engagement with an audience and or community. We now allow applicants to apply for all types of opportunities, and you do not have to have a public presentation or an event. We used to require that, we no longer do. However, we do require that you think about and make the case for how this investment in you is rippling out to serve and impact the wider community. So you might be looking for funds to purchase that laptop, but you still have to think about how does that investment impact future work, allow you to reach more people, allow you to share your art, and through this investment of public funds, have an impact on the wider Tri-County region. So everybody get, that seems to be, after doing a year of this grant program, that's the kind of make or break review criteria, engagement with an audience or community. All right, next slide. We're going to take a break, make sure that there's any questions. Helen, have you seen anything in the chat we should share at this point?
Oh my God, the Q&As are keeping me going, and there's some good ones to answer live. So here we go. I understand the fall 2023 grant award announcements will be made by December 15th. If I have a project that will start or launch in November and go through December, is it possible to qualify for this grant cycle?
Yes, it is. We do want there to be some public engagement beyond December 15th in order to be eligible, but you can already start working on a project now, this fall, and you'll be explaining that in the application, what your timeline is and what the impact of the grant will be going forward. So,
Okay,
yeah.
Got another one, thank you. What if your arts nonprofit is fiscally sponsored outside the area?
That's not legally residing in the Tri-County area with your W-9 form, but I would ask that you follow up. We've made exceptions for this, but in the intention really is for funding to go back, including to fiscal sponsors in the Tri-County area.
This is a time-honored question, Ingrid. It comes up all the time. Is it possible to apply for a personal art project and make a separate application for the operations and outreach of a not-for-profit? I'm assuming that this person is also running.
Does somebody else want to answer that time-tested, time-honored question? The answer is yes. You can apply for a personal project. Yes, you can apply on behalf of an organization, but you have to have separate accounts in the online system. You can't apply in the same account.
Do we have time for more?
Yes, but somebody else is going to have to answer.
Okay, this is a good one. Yael, how long can the grant funding cover?
Well, it covers as long as you need it to be. The only restriction is that you are not eligible to get funding again from RAC until you close out the grant, the existing grant. Which means use them in a final report.
Okay, I'm gonna skip through some of these because I think they're too specific, and I will try to type your answers and send the answer to you privately. An anonymous attendee wants to clarify that not having an event won't negatively impact an event or show or public component won't negatively impact the application for the higher grant amount. If we have a plan to share out and impact the community in other ways, the plan is for a publication.
That is correct. You do not have to have a public event. Monica, what else do you want to say?
Yes, so we're going to get to the questions that are asked specifically for each amount that you're asking for. And in the $5,000 request, we'll go through what is asked of you if you don't have a public engagement, again, about how you're still impacting, you know, and pushing your artwork forward. And, you know, it is part of the whole thing, the whole process, right? The public funding and it being impactful on the community and your art making. So we'll get a little bit more detail on that here shortly.
I just want to add, you are just in a more discipline specific way. If you're applying for a publication or an album or even a film, and you're not planning a screening or an artist talk, that's okay. But I would ask you to think about distribution and how that work will eventually get out to audiences. That's a good way to think about that eventual community impact.
Okay, time for more?
Let's do one more.
Okay, we're gonna do this one. For larger scale events, do you prefer to support the event as a whole or a specific portion of the event?
I would say the beauty of the application is that you can talk about the scope. Like, I think I'd say your narrative and your budget should be in alignment. And in the budget, we do ask, what is the RAC funding going to support? So you can be very specific about the funding will support this element of a larger project. But I almost always hear community reviewers want to know, like, they want to know the whole package. It's going to be important for putting it in context.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to the next slide, and there'll be more time for questions later.
All right, so the first step in applying for an Arts3C grant is to create or update your account eligibility profile in the RAC Opportunity Portal. If you already have an account, use that one. If you have more than one, please be sure to use the one that matches the request you're planning to make, meaning if the grant is for yourself as an individual, use your personal account. And if you're filling out the application on behalf of an organized entity, like an LLC or a nonprofit, use the organizational account. RAC makes awards to all types of entity, so please take care in writing your application in the way you are applying, meaning the organization XYZ will do this and this, or John Doe will do this and this. If you're not sure, you can contact us, and we're happy to clarify this up front rather than manage it later. When you're filling out the eligibility profile, please think of how you want to represent yourself. So what voice do you want? You'll be writing the grant proposal in. Are you writing it as representing a business that has an identity as a business, or as an individual artist? You can still choose to be paid as an LLC, but think of how you define yourself and your practice. And how you define yourself is also going to impact how your proposal moves through the application process on our end, which means in which community review panel you'll be placed, and so on. If you do not see the opportunity of Arts3C listed when you log into your account, there are most likely two reasons for that. One is that you have an open RAC grant account, which has to still be reported on and closed before you apply for another opportunity. So please fill out the final report form and submit it, and we'll review it on our end. And once we approve it, which is a pretty quick process, then it will magically appear on your end, the option to apply for the next cycle. And the other reason would be that the applicant eligibility profile shows that you're residing outside of our service area, because you have to be residing in the 3-county region to be eligible for this opportunity. And finally, please consider how we'll pay you after you receive the grant as an LLC, an individual, or an organization. Anything goes, whatever works for you, but just please be consistent as much as possible on the front end of things. Next slide.
All right, so now into the primary artistic discipline and primary artistic genre or mediums. This is to help direct what discipline panel you'll be placed in. So when choosing your primary discipline, genre, medium, and request categories, which I'll show you shortly, take into account the applications that you would like to be considered alongside. Next slide. So as you're checking these boxes and how they relate to is how you want to write as well. So as Yael said, you know, talk about the art project that you're going to be working on. If you checked a category like K through 12 schools, make sure that you're writing about that in your application. You know, we want to group all the equipment purchases together, all the murals together, and so forth. And so just be mindful when you're selecting categories on and how you're writing about the project that you're proposing. Next slide.
So as you start the application, you're going to give the proposal a working title, just kind of helps the community reviewers sort of know what you're working on, but it is optional. You're going to check your grant request amount, which then does lead to different questions we're going to go over. And you'll be providing your grant request time frame. And just to reiterate, your start date can be any time, past, present, or future, but your end date needs to be after December 15th, when the grant cycle begins, including what that public presentation is, should be after December 15th. So your end date in the future. And again, this is your plan for the timeline of your proposed activity. Please don't put an end date after December 15th, but have all of your programming happening before that. We do review to make sure that your activity is extending on beyond the grant cycle. That's one of the things we take a good look at for eligibility. All right, next slide. So then the first 4 questions everybody answers. 1, tell us about your project or activity. It's very straightforward, but we've prompted you all to think about to provide as much detail and information as you can. And we want to hear both about what it is you're working on, what's the content, what is the meat of your proposal, as well as the technique or approach in which you are taking to do your work, as well, and what is the intended outcome of this overall activity. It's kind of your, you know, it's a large paragraph, limited characters, but you're describing the overall activity in that paragraph. It's what would go on the summary page of what was funded with this grant investment. Question number 2, again for everybody, does your request involve other artists, admin support, staff board, anybody else that's helping, be a collaborator or a vendor to help you accomplish your project or activity? In question number 1. If it's yes, you talk about who's involved, what they're doing, and this is important and often gets missed. Why did you select them? What are they bringing to the overall project? You're kind of, you know, in a sentence or 2, given giving an explanation of why they're a great partner on this project. And if the answer is no, if it's really an individual activity, then outline what you're doing. What are your steps for accomplishing your project or activity? How is it, how are you engaged in making whatever it is happen? All right, next slide. Question number 3 for everybody. How does this activity impact you and move your artistic work forward? This is directly related to review criteria, so you know it's important. We want to know, we want to hear from you. How is your evolution as an artist or evolution as an organization or an entity producing art projects impacted by this activity? Not just the funding, it's not just about how does this grant move you forward? How does this money move you forward? But how does the work that you're proposing move your artistic practice forward? And then question number 4, will you engage with the public in the Tri-County area as part of a presentation or activity? Yes, pretty straightforward. Tell us about your venue and how that's going to happen. And then if it's no, oh, yes, if it's you have to answer if it's ADA accessible, and if the answer is no, there's other ways to sort of speak to that community engagement or impact. All right, the next slide.
Okay, so for $3,000 to $5,000 requests, question 5, if yes to public engagement, who's the audience or participants for the public engagement? And what is your promotion, marketing, outreach, or distribution plan? And how many people do you estimate will attend the public engagement or engagements? So talk about how you're going to do your outreach work. How are you going to get your audience to build up, and who's coming? How are you doing all of that? We want to know about your community engagement work. And even if you don't have a public engagement, it's important to think about that community impact. I'm just going to keep saying it because it's super important. And again, it has that last bit. If no to public engagement, how does the grant investment make a difference for your audiences or your local community in the Tri-County region? Next slide, please. Then for the $4,000 and $5,000 requests, there's a few more here. Describe the overall expected timeline for your proposal between your start and end dates, including the estimated timeframes for development, execution, promotion, and any final presentation. So again, this is where if you have a start date that starts tomorrow, talk about what your timeline looks like and into the future, so that you can explain clearly what your program is or project. Then number 7, if yes to a public engagement, what accessibility considerations are you making to support your audience or participants? This can be physical, such as ASL, closed captioning, real-time translation, or financial, such as scholarships, subsidized tickets. So access in a broader term. Oh, sorry, my cat. And then if no to a public engagement, how does this grant investment have long-term impact for your artistic business? So you have space to talk about that as well. Next slide.
Okay, so if you're asking for the full amount of $5,000 request, you're going to be asked to answer this question number 8, about how your project relates to RAC's 6 core values: accessibility, advocacy, equity, diversity, community, and innovation. What's really important to keep in mind is that you do not have to check all the boxes. You do not have to relate your project to all 6 of the core values. And if you are, if you choose 1 or 2 or 3 and you hone in on those, that is perfectly fine and valid, and it could make your application a lot stronger. Be really thoughtful and read through the guidelines to make sure that you understand how RAC defines each one of these values. We've seen a lot of people ask for $5,000 and not really answer the core value question. So please think if your project would be more competitive and compelling at a $4,000 ask if you find it to be a bit of a stretch to connect it to these core values. Next slide. And then finally, in this round, we've always asked this question of closing statement in the Arts3C grant, but we've revised the wording a little bit. And basically what we're asking for you is to give the community reviewers a little bit more information on why the community should invest in your project. How do you make the case for the community to invest in your project? And we really ask that because we want applicants to keep in mind that these grants are being funded from public funds. Next slide. More questions.
Helen, do we have any good ones in the chat?
Oh, crikey, yes. Scrolling up to the top. I have some respect here. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Are applications still open for proposal reviewers? If so, is it a conflict of interest to review grant proposals when you have a proposal under review?
So yes, you can apply to be a community reviewer. However, you cannot have a grant application in the same cycle as serving as a community reviewer. So if you're looking at this, if you have an open grant right now and you're thinking, I don't have time to fill out my final report, so I'm not eligible in this cycle, but I'd love to be a community reviewer, please consider linking through. Maybe by the end we can put in a link to applying to be a community reviewer. However, if now is the time for you to be an applicant, we can support you through that application process, but we can't consider you as a community reviewer for this cycle. That is a conflict of interest. We open up the opportunity again later in the year. So always looking for people to engage with in the community review process. It's hard work, but it is, I think, rewarding. Next question.
Does the total project cost need to be mostly covered by RAC funding, or can we apply for a larger project that will require multiple funding sources?
You can apply for a larger project with multiple funding sources, and we're going to talk about the budget after this question break. And there's also in the guidelines and in the online application some ideas for fundraising that might cover some of those other costs.
Okay, this is a question regarding community outreach and impact. So the organization already does quite a bit on their own as best they are able. Will RAC assist with promotion of a project if the grant is awarded?
I'm looking at you, Monica.
We'd love to share out what's going on and how the grant has impacted artists and arts organizations. So there's information on our website and when you receive a grant award as well in the portal on how to reach out and to tag us, how to include us in your informational packet or promotional material for your event or whatever kind of your project ends up being. So it's definitely part of it as well. We want to share out and know what's going on out there in the community and how it's being impactful.
Okay, can you submit an application on behalf of a public school arts program to support the students? If the answer is yes, are there limits on what the funds can be used for? For example, student travel, hiring outside artists to work with the students, etc.
Those are all eligible costs, and we would love to see proposals that support arts activities in schools and youth engaging in arts programming. The school can apply, the school district can apply, or the parent teacher or parent, whatever those committees are called, PTA, they could be the applicant. The artist doing a project in a school could be the applicant. All are eligible.
Yael, can the grant be used for advertising an event?
Yes. Any costs associated with your, with the promotion of your project could be covered.
Right on. Can a grant proposal fall into more than one request category? For example, professional development and operations.
Yes.
Yes, I think you get to select two main request categories. Just keep it in mind, everything you check could direct your application to be on a panel in that area. So don't just check. I don't think it allows you to check 10 boxes, but you want to be thoughtful of like, oh, I want this reviewed along with other professional development opportunities. So I'm going to check that box. Be thoughtful about it. I want to say one more thing about costs. We used to have restrictions. You couldn't spend money on food, rack money on food. You couldn't spend rack money on equipment, but we don't have those restrictions anymore. You can spend money on artist fees, your own artist fees. That's really, I think, important to know. This, you can use this money to pay you for your own time. Production costs, venue rental, it's all eligible. All right, one more question and then we'll move on to the budget.
Yes, I'm gonna go to one that's a little bit later, and I'm sorry to anybody who submitted questions prior to this one, but I do think it's good. Do I need to have a public portfolio, resume, or work? And I'm assuming that means the exhibition of work to be strongly considered, or can this be my first public art project?
This can be your first, that's eligible, your first public art or your first public project. You will need to provide a resume or bio that supports your practice as an artist, and you will need to provide work samples that give folks an idea of your work, but this can be the first big project or the first public presentation of work. All right.
Thank you.
All right, next slide. Okay, so you will, in the online system, complete the task for the application, those narrative questions we've gone over, and then you will be presented with the budget task. It is limited to 10 lines of expenses, which we see here. This is just screenshot on the left, and 10 possible contributions on the revenue side of your budget. There's a line item to fill out on both sides of a description of what it is, and then you put in your amount and it totals at the bottom. I just want to, it's not all the detail is here on the slide. What I want to really impress upon you is that there are details in the online system as well as the guidelines to give you guidance about how to do a budget line item description. Please just don't say artist fees, $2,000. Say, one artist, headliner, $1,000, 3 supporting musicians, whatever, 200 to 300 each, and then put the total 2,000 in the amount. Like, break it down. Give us a little detail on how you're coming up with those totals in the amount, in the numbers. And then somebody asked, do you fill it out for the grant request amount? And it's not, if you are asking for example, for $3,000 and your budget, your expenses are only totaling $3,000, and your RAC grant request is on the contribution side is the only thing there as a projected $3,000, that's okay. We see plenty of those. But if your activity is more than the grant request, yes, put all those costs on the budget side, and then detail your additional, your additional fundraising. Are you selling tickets? Are you doing an online fundraiser like GoFundMe? Are you doing a workshop and asking folks to pay a workshop fee as part of your activity and fundraising? Are you applying to other grants? There are, do you have your own money in the bank, applicant cash that you want to put towards the cost for this activity? Some of those ideas are listed right there in the guidelines. We do not require in kind, which is donated goods or services. If you list somebody donating their time or resources in the contribution side of your project, make sure that's listed against an actual expense. That's one of those, in kind is one of those tricky things that if you don't know how to list it, just stick with cash. What is it? What is an expense and what is how you're raising money to cover it? We do ask you to balance your budget so that your total expenses equals your revenue. It's one of those places where people get stuck and it can tank an application when folks are just throwing numbers around. So please be thoughtful about your budget. They're on every panel. We have about 4 community reviewers on every panel. Every panel, somebody's a numbers person. Somebody's looking to the budget and pointing out what the story that the numbers tell. So be thoughtful. And the last little tidbit I want to say is the things listed in your budget should have already come up somewhere in the application, and vice versa. If you talk about an activity or an element of your project in the narrative in the application, it should also pop up in your budget. They should be related to each other. They are different elements of the same activity. So be thinking about it holistically. All right, next slide. The other things that you are asked to do before you submit your application is upload resumes or bios for yourself if you are an artist, or for collaborators as well, main collaborators, or project leads if you're an organization. You are asked to upload work samples. They should be related to what you are proposing so that people can look at the work samples as reviewers and be convinced that it's going to be an amazing project because you know what you're doing, and that's what the work samples are helping support. Everybody is required to upload cost research documentation. That doesn't mean you're regurgitating the budget. That means you are screenshotting the research you've done on Amazon on what it's going to cost for you to get the materials. That means uploading an example of a contract with a collaborator, something that shows the work that's done so that your numbers in your budget make sense. Do not wait to complete your application on the day of, because this is now required and you'll have to do that work of uploading cost documentation in order to submit. And then there is an optional opportunity to include other documents, letters of recommendation, not required, but some folks include that, invitation to residencies, I don't know, all things. We've seen folks who maybe were frustrated by the character limit of their in the RAC grant application. And I would suggest that if you've got a longer, I don't know, what's it called? Longer project proposal that didn't fit in the little RAC narrative budget, not the budget, in the narrative questions, upload that document as other support documents. We don't mind having additional info included in the supplemental materials. All right, we've got a few minutes left. Let's go to the next slide.
All right. Keep in mind that reviews are all online, so make sure that you're checking links that you upload. If there's passwords to them, that those are all working and that they're correct. Instagram as well. Sometimes if they're not public, then it's just an Instagram that reviewers aren't able to look at. We have our RAC has their conflict of interest policy, which Ingrid spoke about a little bit earlier. Also for reviewers, it goes the same way. We make sure that community reviewers, if there's a conflict of interest, that they let us know, and then they don't review those applications. Grant awards take into account our budget. So depending on how much we have in our budget is how much we'll be able to allocate in that grant cycle. We also take into account panel rankings and underserved communities. So we take a look at demographics. Everyone is notified by email and online, as I said earlier. So check your portal and just make sure that you keep us in your address book on your email your email list so that you receive emails from us. Next slide.
All right, so you received a grant. December 15th, you got that email, you received a grant. So the things to know about that is that you will, when you get the grant award email, you will have a link to the grant award administration guide. The main things to know about that is that the full grant amount will be paid up front when the grant agreement is signed. So you'll get a link for a grant agreement. You'll fill it out with your financial documents, verifying your address, and you're going to provide us with a W-9 form and a direct deposit form, which is an optional way to receive the money, but it's recommended. It's far more secure than getting a check mailed to your address. And then the other thing is that we require that you acknowledge the RAC grant with a logo or a text when you're promoting it or announcing your project and or the activity. And then once you're done, we've talked about this a little bit, the final report will be due once the activity is completed. It's a very short process. We just ask for you to reflect briefly on the successes and challenges of the activity, to provide us a final actual budget, the documentation of the project, and the RAC acknowledgement of the activity. Next slide.
All right, you've made it to the end of the info session. We want you to know about other opportunities for support. You can always send your questions to grants@rac.org. It comes to the whole team. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. This is really our focus for the next month, is getting emails answered, questions answered, so you feel supported. There is an FAQ available online if you want to check that out, have any other questions about the process. We are available to provide translation services as well as support accessibility needs. Please reach out. You can email grants@rac.org. And then, most importantly, we provide grant draft review. This doesn't mean that it guarantees you a grant, a grant award through the process. Community reviewers are the ones who sit on panels and score the applications and make decisions. But if you have the opportunity to get a draft done in the system, meaning you finish the narrative and the budget, you don't have to upload support materials, but that will be the focus. Someone on the grants team, and you have to notify us that it's ready no later than Tuesday, September 12th. Let us know by emailing our team email. We will, one of us will read that application, make grant writing notes, schedule a time to talk to you on the phone and go over your application, give you tips, ask you questions, give you a little guidance on kind of tightening it up, getting it ready for the community review process. You're here to learn, so I know you're engaged. Feel free to take advantage of this grant draft review. It's just a great way to have an outside set of eyes, take a look at your proposal and make sure it's ready. If you can't get it done by September 12th, I am just gonna say, it's not a bad idea to have somebody else in your world read your application before you submit it. Having an outside set of eyes, make sure that it's ready to go is always a good thing. All right, next slide. We're down to our last questions.
We got a couple more here that I want to get in. Do you have to be certain of all your sources of additional funding before the Arts3 amount when applying?
No, you can mark things as projected as well as any confirmed sources. So it doesn't have to be in the bank yet.
Can a grant be used for a studio build out or equipment, or for creating a studio in a non-public space?
Yes, but you're going to have to make that case for both ADA accessibility and community impact. So you're going to be having to think big picture if it's a very specific studio build out that serves only you.
Okay, this is a good question. They were all good questions, forgive me. What if your venue claims to be ADA accessible, but you know from personal experience that it is accessible-ish and is difficult to navigate?
Find a different venue. And give them that feedback. Tell them that it's not truly ADA accessible.
Do you have to choose who will be involved? I'm assuming this means in your proposal before submitting the application. The first step of the project that I have in mind is choosing different artists to record, but the project is contingent upon getting the funds from RAC.
It is not required to have people committed to your project. It's always a good thing to have a plan. If you are starting to put feelers out, give them a heads up. I'd like to put your name as a potential collaborator in my application, because sometimes we've had people who are reviewers whose names pop up on projects they have no idea of. So always be like if you're going to do that, I'm thinking about John Doe. Give John Doe a heads up that you'd like to include them in the project. And if you're not ready to list names, outline a plan, including your criteria for how you will engage with people and select them to participate. If you don't know who's involved, the thing that community reviewers go to is, how are you going to engage people, and what's your criteria for selecting them? That's important.
Okay, I think this is going to be the last one for making 2 Arts3 applications. This has been a reoccurring theme today. One for my personal work and another for the presenting organization. Is it okay if the presenting organization is organized as a sole proprietor business?
I think that's okay. The projects should not be related. Please don't be applying it as an individual to make work and then have a separate account for that entity to be applying to present your work. But if you have an individual artistic practice as well as an arts business, and they are separate, then each could apply for their own grant.
We have time for one more. I'm sorry, it's another accessibility. These are really good ones because it is important. Does ADA accessibility matter for a recording studio space if the community component or community-based value is going to be an online experience?
If you as a musician or recording artist are doing work in a private space or a recording studio that is otherwise not ADA accessible, we're not policing you. We're not coming down and yanking grant funding. You will need to be mindful of how the outcome, the project, the product is being shared with community. So I think that's okay, unless you are asking for funding to support a non-ADA accessible studio build out. That will not sit well. That's not great. Anything to add?
How selective is the grant application process?
Last cycle, we had 648 eligible applications. Woo, record breaking. Do I think we're gonna have more this cycle? Yes, my gut says yes, more applications. And we were able to, in the last grant cycle, fund 40%. That's good. I don't think we're gonna be at 40% this next, I think it'll be a little less. Given the increase, my gut saying an increase in numbers. So it's competitive. We fund less than half, but more than a third.
Okay, I'm sorry. I completely missed this question. Is it frowned upon or otherwise weighted negatively if your request for funding includes a number of specific purchases, for example, equipment?
Equipment's fine. It's a whole request category of your own. Just make sure you're writing in the application about the impact on your practice and the wider community.
And then finally, 1A, using the word rejected quite a few times. In this situation, are portions of a grant ever rejected and the amount of the grant award made smaller as a rejection of certain components from the budget? Or are grants just rejected in total?
I hate the word rejected. But
Sorry,
not,
anonymous attendee, we really don't like that word.
not every grant gets selected for funding. It's true. However, if you are, somehow we missed in the kind of panel review process. I don't know if I like that, I accidentally deleted that slide, but if you rise up in the process for funding, you'll get the full request amount. Somebody might have questions about your budget, but if you still do well in the process, you'll get the grant. There's just that one element of sometimes $5,000 requests are only awarded $4,000, but it doesn't have to do with your budget. All right. I think the last slide is just our thank you slide, but we can unshare and our logo. Thank you for attending. Please reach out with your questions, grants@rac.org. We're here for you as long as we possibly can be here.
It's Ingrid's birthday. Happy birthday, Ingrid. Yay.
Yay, nowhere I'd rather be than supporting artists with an info session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.